From the air, it may not look like much, but on the ground, the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion loomed large long before it was even built. Dividing Canadians into those who oppose the line and those who rallied to support it. So those protests have pretty much wrapped up now. The project has too. The expanded Trans Mountain line will now move almost 3 times as much oil as it did before. That got us wondering how people who live along that line feel about it. So our team packed up and hit the road, looking to travel the entire length of the Trans Mountain expansion, from oil country in Alberta.
All of Alberta. The oil and gas touches every facet of every community.
Through First Nations divided on what to do now that the pipeline is done.
We've always lived with the risk, and now we want some of the benefit.
To the heart of opposition on the BC coast.
If you're going to try and ship that stuff, we'll be out there to stop you.
Quite the road trip. The line starts in Edmonton, heading west for about 1,000 kilometers. It crosses the Rockies, then heads south to Camloops before heading west to the coast, finally stopping at Trans Mountain's marine terminal in Burnaby. The line starts here in the heart of oil country at this Edmonton tank farm, and long before you get to the coast, it passes through Gainford, Alberta. Population 118, not counting the chickens. Around here, agriculture is many people's bread and butter, and those who don't farm often rely on pulling something else from the ground to get by.
A lot of people in this area, if they're not farming, they're working in oil and gas or used to be working in the coal.
Most people here more than okay with the line and the industry that supports it.
There's a balance for sure. I mean, we all have to eat, we have bills to pay, most of us drive cars. A lot of things rely on the oil and gas still, and until there are better alternatives in place for people that generally live in a rural environment, you have to step up and pay attention to the oil and gas.
But oil and gas comes with some risks. Pipelines do leak, spills do happen. The TMX line runs just along the other side of the highway here. Next to that is a train line. A derailment there about a decade ago caused an explosion, igniting oil cars and melting the siding off the house here. That close call makes the pipeline seem like a safer bet.
Something like a pipeline break or something like that is unlikely to happen. You're probably more likely to get hit by a car crossing the road. Yeah. So you got to put it all in perspective, right?
Doesn't keep you up at night.
No, the train.
Train keeps you up at night. About an hour down the road is Edson, Alberta. The train station there, now a museum. This is an oil and gas town and the hub for the local construction of the TMX project. The benefits of all that building trickling down into every nook and cranny here, all the way to this local parts store.
Can you grab, you want 2? Can you grab 2 of those blue propane bottles?
There was a big bump in sales here while the line was being built. It meant more work for the 15 employees here and throughout the town.
We had a lot of business indirectly from the pipeline and the construction crews and everybody going through Edson's.
A business has come back down since construction of the line wrapped, but that's the way of things in the up and down world of oil and gas. And there's faith that the next big energy project will soon spark the economy again. Okay, so parts like this, important for the oil and gas industry. How important is oil and gas to the economy around here?
Not just around here, but all of Alberta. The oil and gas touches every facet of every community in one way or another.
You can expect the same standards
Thank you. Now, like in most small towns, you get the real story over coffee. You just take it black?
Yep.
Yeah, me
I
too.
learned that in the trucking years.
Yeah, I was a truck driver too.
Yeah.
Places like this diner were packed during construction, and there's a feeling here that the line will be good for the whole country too.
Well, honestly, we have to remember Canada is built on natural resources. So, I mean, like it or not, you know, where people will, well, we shouldn't do this. Alberta is, that's been our driver for years, is natural resources.
That's why when opposition to the line was at its highest in some parts of Canada, people here in Edson took to the streets. Was it frustrating that you had to kind of like get that message out so vocally?
Well, it was frustrating to an extent, but as Albertans, we understand this. So where other people were opposed, we were just letting the other parts were in favor of it, and this is why.
Heading west along the line, at least for now, support for the project remains strong. People can see and feel the impact of it up close. Places like Blue River, BC. Trans Mountain has long operated a facility here. The expansion meant lots of activity in a community where there isn't a lot going on. There's just a handful of kids enrolled at the local school. And like many small towns, every job matters.
Obviously, the building was a big source of revenues with all those workers in their communities. But as you continue to have maintenance crew, you'll have some permanent workers.
But the line is expected to have bigger impacts on the economy too. More pipeline capacity to the coast means more customers for more Canadian crude, and that likely means a better price too. And experts say that should benefit the broader Canadian economy.
It means a revenue of about $13 billion or so per year in new exports. Again, to put that in perspective, we exported about $125 billion of oil as Canada as a whole last year, so it will allow a big increase of about 10%.
A reminder that despite predictions that demand for oil could soon peak, this expansion is a reaction to a still growing appetite for fossil fuels. Construction began on the original line way back in 1952, fueled by demand for the large oil deposits found in Alberta in the 40s. Since it was built, Trans Mountain has always run through Camloops, passing right by this dog park along the way. The park had to be closed during the twinning of the line, but it's open again.
She's known as the princess of the park, my dog. And I've had people drive by and yell, "Angie!"
People here used to the idea of their pups playing near the pipe.
I think that it's great that they twinned the pipe. Now we can actually move some oil safer. You know, it's old pipe, old technology. They didn't have the standards they have today when they put the pipe in. So I don't see any problem with it.
A positive spin, to be sure. Of course, not everyone in Camloops agrees. The Thompson River runs right through Secwepemc territory. So does the Trans Mountain pipeline, its expansion easy to see from the banks. For some who speak the language, TMX is a scar on the land impossible to ignore.
If we don't say anything, if we're not being active in our communities and doing the ceremonies that we're doing, then we won't, people won't know what our opposition is.
Yo, hey, yo, hey, yo, hey, yo, hey, yo, hey, yo.
This Secwepemc matriarch made her objection clear, cutting her hair in protest.
All lives on Secwepemc. We see you, we love you.
Mourning the expansion of the line running across her nation's land.
Take in our sister.
Arrested and jailed for standing in its way.
this is our lives as Indigenous people, is we're protecting water and we're wanting to have ceremony and do all of that, then, you know, this is it. This is all of it here. This is what we're protecting.
Worries about water and a belief that her people weren't properly consulted, fueling her opposition to the pipeline.
There's no way you could ever support this project.
No. The land belongs to the children, and so anyone who is doing otherwise is not looking out for the best interests of the children.
Just 40 kilometers outside Camloops, the pipeline crosses the Whispering Pines Indian Band's territory. The potential dangers of the line lie just under this ground too, but they're walking a different path here, seeing an opportunity in this expansion.
This is where the risk and the reward sort of sits for you.
Yeah, we've always lived with the risk, and now we want some of the benefit. Previously, the benefits has always flowed somewhere else. Today it goes to Ottawa. Previously, it went to Houston, Texas.
People here are part of an Indigenous-led group that wants to buy Trans Mountain.
Come on, babe. She won't come over here. She's a rodeo horse. She knows if I go for a ride on her, it's for work. Come on, Chinook.
Used to chasing down horses, now rounding up other First Nations looking to invest, partnering with a Calgary-based pipeline company to make it happen. No easy task.
I always tell people I have 8 sisters, and if you think they all agree, I have some news for you. Because, you know, not everybody agrees with owning the pipeline. And I get it, I understand. But it's here, it's on the landscape. We have to live with it. We are living with it. We've lived with it for 70 years. And we saw no benefit, so let's try and live with it for the next 70 years, only with a benefit.
Now, the group has around 40 nations on board so far, but it isn't the only Indigenous-led group looking for ownership of the pipeline. Back in Alberta, another group hopes to use the pipeline to help right historical wrongs.
Every First Nation has managed poverty since the signing of treaties and since the establishment of this country. That has to change.
This member of the Enoch Cree Band helped start up the nation's casino, a business that boosted his band's finances. Now he's rolling the dice on buying a pipeline. His group wants to own TMX entirely, divvying up the profits between all the impacted First Nations along the line. A kind of economic reconciliation.
What these initiatives are trying to change are those economic opportunities for the respective First Nations to share in the revenue base. If they would have done that, and by that I mean if the government would have done that right from day one, there wouldn't be the poverty that we have on these communities.
All along TMX's path, First Nations are hearing these pitches. Talk of economic benefits down the road. Similar cases were made when the pipeline expansion was first proposed. Further west, near Abbotsford, BC, the Sumas Band and their chief were listening.
It was back and forth, and of course, yeah, people were looking at the possibility of getting some money out of this, right?
This Trans Mountain tank farm sits on traditional Sumas territory. The risk of a spill in the area anything but hypothetical. There have been several over the years. Worries about more accidents complicate any economic benefits here.
I mean, you've agreed to what's going on here, but that doesn't mean you're not worried about what it's going to mean for your people.
Yes, we've come to an agreement, but of course there are the concerns that still worry us. Yeah, the majority of our people said that we need to go into an agreement of sorts, but my personal druthers were otherwise.
And it's mostly about water, right? I mean, it's mostly about water running downhill.
Yeah, water and environment in general. And after the spill,
the Sumas have come to an agreement to let the pipeline cross their territory, but for now, they've decided they don't want an ownership stake.
No, you know what? Some of those guys are my good buddies. They're my bros, and they know I have opposing views, and they still approach me and wonder if I'm interested in things like that. But I have the Hualmuch, the old First Nations perspective that Our obligation to our lands is to look after them.
As we approach the coast where Trans Mountain meets the sea, resistance to the line is perhaps most fierce. In Vancouver, the Tsleil-Waututh Nation has been leading that resistance. The Trans Mountain's marine terminal sits on unceded Tsleil-Waututh territory.
You threaten our lands and waters. Right?
I have
How
heard,
dare you bring that
I have
to our
heard
waters?
from some
Those
fellow
are
leaders of
spiritual
yours.
highways. You
I
have
have
no
heard,
right to do that to us.
Sir?
Members of that nation have gone to jail to stop the project.
It's interesting as we kind of look across the water here.
Still fighting it, even now that it's been built.
It doesn't change anything. We've been here since time out of mind, protecting and caring for our water. You know, there are some concerns because now the risks are real.
Those risks tied to climate change and the natural disasters associated with it. This pipeline project, part of a larger existential threat for this nation.
Tsleil-Waututh means people this water right here, because that's, as the legend goes, that's where our first mother comes from. So we protect her because she takes care of us. Water takes care of us. You know, so of course we're very concerned with the fires, the atmospheric rivers, with the floods.
Still, the Trans Mountain expansion is a done deal. More oil will move from this terminal into tankers in Burrard Inlet.
Our future! Our fight! Our future! Our fight!
Over the years, Vancouver's art gallery was ground zero for many protests against the line.
Whenever I came here, it was a big thing. It was like, whoa, there's a lot of energy here, there's a lot of people here.
But that energy has changed. It's much quieter here now. And this Secwepemc knowledge keeper, a hard no on the pipeline in the past, has softened, focused on moving on.
I want people who are so on one side or the other to remember that we're people, that we're here in this together, that we have to reach each other's hearts, minds, and spirits.
It's not easy. For many, the completion of TMX is a lost battle, but the war is ongoing.
What would you say to Canadians and to people that are concerned about things like this moving forward?
A decade is enough. We can't keep doing this. We can't. We have to take care of ourselves, we have to take care of each other, and we have to find ways to bring that spirit into the halls of power.
A shift in perspective, a step away from conflict. But down the road in Burnaby, TMX is harder to walk away from. It's the end of the line for Trans Mountain, where all that oil hits tidewater and where opposition is the strongest. Trans Mountain's tank farm looms large atop Burnaby Mountain. Here for decades, it's bigger these days. More space needed to hold more oil coming down an expanded line. The tank farm casts a shadow over some residents here.
So the tanks have always been here, but the issue now is there's more and they're bigger, and that's the worry.
Bigger,
yeah.
and the potential for a tank farm explosion and a fire, a fire from the tank farm.
Yeah.
What would we do?
Yeah, you're living this close. I mean, if that's your
backyard.
backyard.
I call it the incineration zone.
Growing worries about all that fuel being stored on this mountain.
Would it take a disaster to change our dependence on fossil fuels?
This path, the heart of local opposition to TMX, a traditional Coast Salish watch house built as part of that resistance, still stands. Its elder still here, still fighting too, even as the oil starts flowing.
We will be out there with our boats. That's the final line with this stuff. You're going to try and ship that stuff. We'll be out there to stop you.
It's a long, hard-fought battle. Protesters here thought they'd won. They say the project's previous owner, Kinder Morgan Pipelines, was thinking twice. That's until Ottawa got involved.
The game changed when Trudeau jumped into it. We had stopped them. Kinder Morgan was pulling out of British Columbia and going back to Texas. We had stopped them, and then the federal government jumps in.
So the Canadian taxpayer owns Trans Mountain now, spending more than $30 billion to get the project finished. But these Burnaby residents say it wasn't just the feds that kept TMX alive. They say Canada's big banks helped bail out the project too, helping to keep TMX afloat while costs ballooned to nearly 5 times initial estimates.
So this is about stopping the money pipeline, because the only way these projects get to that bait and switch is by financing at the beginning.
And they say unless that changes, Canada will be unable to meet its looming climate goals.
So here we are, our bathtub of emissions is overflowing, and we're looking around for the mop and some towels, but we're not turning off the spigot. So we're about turning off the spigot.
Opponents of TMX still frustrated they were unable to stop the project, but resigned to the fact that ship has sailed. The marine terminal on Burrard Inlet now filling more tankers with oil from the line. Locals worried about what that means for this inlet and for the bridges that cross it.
I'm worried about the tanker taking out one of the pillars and spilling its contents, right?
This recent crash in Baltimore, a chilling reminder of what can go wrong. A cargo ship lost power, crashing into a bridge there, killing 6.
So triple the amount of hydrocarbons are going to come through your neighborhood, right to this marine terminal.
Right.
How does that make you feel?
Well, less safe. I must say that I have never thought of it before until they started building this and expanding it and wanting to bring more in, right?
Tanker traffic to the Trans Mountain Terminal is going to dramatically increase from about 1 per week to about 1 a day. A big jump, more big ships on the water more often. We wanted to see for ourselves what that looked like. So we hit the water with a local conservation group.
What goes through your mind when you see like a tanker of that size sitting so close to people that are, crabbing?
Yeah, I mean, and I know like the Tsleil-Waututh Nation has been doing a lot of work to try to restore Burrard Inlet, and so much work that they've been doing could be so quickly undone by one little spill or accident.
Of course, spills aren't the only threat caused by the increase in traffic here. More ships, a symptom of more demand for oil. For now, a necessity, even among those who oppose fossil fuels.
It would be awesome if this boat had an electric engine on it, and that's the kind of thing we'd love to work towards. And so, yeah, no, we're not going to stop right now. And of course, I drove a truck to get this boat here as well. So yeah, it's about kind of working together on making that transition in a good way, I think. And not leaving those folks in Alberta behind either.
Noise from the ships could make life harder for killer whales in the area too. Researchers have looked into how noisy tankers are affecting orcapods.
When you're a whale and you're echolocating, you're sending sonar signals for food, and you're listening for the echoes to be able to figure out where the fish is. You have a space that is greatly reduced with underwater noise.
All that extra noise makes it harder for the whales to hunt. Having ships slow down or use quieter engines can help minimize the impact, but this scientist says it's not enough.
So what's it like for a killer whale to be out in the water with all that extra tanker traffic?
The best analogy I can give is that of navigating in a sort of acoustic fog or acoustic smog. It is the same as for people to be trying to find each other in very, very thick smog or fog.
And of course, spills are a big worry for marine life too, an uneasiness rooted in recent experience.
In 2007, we had a pipeline rupture because of a construction operation just behind me here. And that sent tens of thousands of gallons of crude oil into Burrard Inlet, into the waters around this terminal. So these spills happen.
So more oil is now flowing here in Burrard Inlet. How people feel about that often depends on where they sit along that line. From embracing the economic benefits in Edson,
I believe it's still absolutely essential to us,
to agonizing about the environmental impact in Burnaby.
The fact that that ship has sailed is a tremendous disappointment.
And now that the crude is moving, there's likely only one way to slow it down: use less.
Part of the journey around the pipeline to me is trying to empower a sense that each individual in this area has a role to play, has an opportunity to weigh in and reduce our collective footprints in the greater Salish Sea.
An understanding that no matter which side of the pipeline divide you sit, it's here to stay, at least until we stop needing it.